So we've got our sign-in form complete. We now need to give our user the ability to toggle between the sign-in and a sign-up form. And we'll create the sign-up form in just a little bit. Right now, the user can only ever look at the sign-in form. We need to show them a button down here that says, hey, I need to sign up for an account. And when they tap it, completely change the content of the existing screen. Naturally, navigation like this is something that React Native can really help us out with. I'm going to open my browser and then navigate to the React Native documentation. On the left-hand nav, I'm going to scroll down a little bit and we're going to find the navigator component. So the navigator is what we're going to use to essentially navigate or change screens inside of our application. It gives us the ability to change the content that is currently displayed on the screen and what's currently visible to the user. So we're going to make use of this component to handle navigation between the sign-in and the sign-up form for us. Now you might notice in the documentation that there's another component here named something very similar, Navigator iOS. And you might say, well, why aren't we using it? And the answer really is quite simple. Well, it only really supports iOS, but we're trying to make a component or an app here that works on both iOS and Android. It's also a lot more limited in its functionality in general. You can read a really good write-up on the differences between the two if you look underneath the guide section and find Navigator comparison. And this will tell you all about the difference between Navigator and Navigator iOS. But I think if you read the list of items in here, it's pretty critical on Navigator iOS, and Navigator is definitely the clear, much more functional and flexible navigator that you can make use of. So before we implement the navigator, we are going to talk a lot about exactly how it works. The navigator itself is a component, just like any other component that we've created. And so we're going to render this component inside of another component. Once the navigator is rendered, we can place other views inside of the navigator. And then the navigator can decide which of those views, which of those components it wants to show. So normally for a topic like this, I would break out like an interesting mock. But this topic happens to be, Navigator is very challenging to explain, or at least I found it challenging to explain. So in this case, we're going to do a little bit more of a live mock-up here, a little bit more of a live demo, and hopefully it will adequately communicate what's going on here. We're going to be alt-tabbing several times between the Navigator docs and this canvas over here to explain what's going on. So if you want to pull open the docs here on your own computer and take a glance at them and pause this video and maybe read through a couple of these methods as we discuss them, that would probably be pretty helpful. Okay, so let's imagine that this diagram right here kind of represents our application. Let's take a look at it. In the middle, we've got a big rectangle, and that is representing main.js. So main.js continues to be and will always be the center focal point of our entire application. It's the most root component. Inside of main, we're going to place another component, the navigator. And the navigator is represented by this big U thing right here. There's no top to it, it's just like a big U. The navigator is represented as a U because it should be thought of as kind of like a stack or a container. We stack components inside of the navigator. By default, when our application first renders, we're always going to want to show signin.js. So I'm going to take signin.js and I'm going to drag it into the stack right here. So I now have inside of my navigator a stack consisting of one component, just signin.js, one component. Whichever view is at the top of this stack is visible to the user. That means that when main.js first renders, signin.js is going to be visible to the user. As the user starts to navigate throughout our application, however, other views are going to be added into the stack. When other views are added in, they will all of a sudden become visible because they are higher in the stack than signin.js. So let's imagine the case that a user is looking at our sign-in component, right? So it's in our stack right here. And they then tap a button that says, I need to sign up. Please take me to the sign up form. And we're going to add that here very shortly. So this is a very relevant example. So to show the user a sign up form, we need to add another component to the Navigator stack. And that's going to be signup.js. So I'm going to take our signup component here, and I'm going to add it to the stack. Our Navigator now has two views in its stack, sign in and sign up. The user is now going to be looking at sign up because it's higher in the stack than sign in. Adding another view on top of another like this, adding sign up on top of sign in is referred to as pushing a view or pushing a component. We are pushing a new component to the top of the stack here. We pushed sign up to the top of the stack on top of sign in. And you can really think of that terminology, of pushing as being the same as like array.push inside of with JavaScript arrays. We're pushing a record to the very end or the very top of the stack here. So let's now, let's say that a user booted our application, they were looking at sign in, they clicked the button to show sign up, so we pushed sign up to the top here, and they're now looking at signup.js. And let's imagine for a minute here that there's a button on sign up that says, how do I sign up? Like, let's say this person has just no idea what's going on. They need instructions on how to sign up. Well, maybe when they tap sign up, we want to take them to another view that shows them some documentation that tells them, hey, you need to pick out a username, you need to pick out a password, and you enter that into this field and press this button, and poof, you're signed up. Whatever, basically some help to sign up. So to show that kind of sign up help form, that kind of sign up help component that would help them through that, when they tap the button on sign up to show that help form, we would then be pushing another view onto the stack, which we might call sign up help, which would contain that stuff like, hey, here's how you sign up. Now that sign up help is on the top of the stack, sign up is no longer visible, and sign in is no longer visible as well. Now here's the interesting part. We just imagine a situation in which a user went to the sign-in screen, then the sign-up screen, and then the sign-up help screen. Let's imagine that the user then says, oh, you know what, I remember how to sign up now, I know how to do this. I want to go back to the sign-up page. So I want to go back in my view hierarchy. I want to retreat to the last view that I was looking at. So we need to remove sign-up help from the stack here. When we remove a view from the stack, it's referred to as popping off of the stack. So we're going to pop off the top view. Now the current active view for the user is signup.js. So we just popped off signup help, which removed it off of our view stack. So let's then say that the user is looking at signup and they then say, oh my gosh, you know what? I know how to sign up, but I also just realized that I also already have signed into this application before. I remember my username and password. I want to go back to the sign-in form and put in my username and put in my password and sign in. In that case, they would then tap a button that says, hey, take me back to sign up, please. We would then pop off signup.js as well. So to review, adding a view to our stack pushes a view. When we push a view onto our stack, it becomes visible to the user. It's at the top of the stack. When we pop a view, we remove it from the stack, and it shows the view that was underneath it. So if I were to push sign up, I push it, it's now visible, it's at the top of the stack. If I pop it, I take it off, and now I see sign in again. So this idea of pushing and popping views is very core to the Navigator. And you can check out the documentation here. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can see the documentation on both these methods here. We can see pop transitions back and unmounts the current scene. Scene here being like a view or component. In other words, hey, like whatever view is I'm currently looking at, please take it off the stack. I want to go to the one before it. And I also have the method here, push, so I can add another view on as well. Okay, so hopefully the idea of pushing and popping a view is clear. Let's take it one step further and consider the case in which a user successfully signs in to the application. Okay, so as we mentioned, when a user signs into the app, or when the user first launches our application, they're always going to see signin.js because they need to, on that initial launching the application, they need to sign into our application. So let's say that they boot the app up, they see the sign-in screen, they sign in, and then they now want to navigate to some resource that's protected behind authentication. And let's say that's called like post.js. So let's say that user signs in, and now they want to see a list of all their posts. So you might think to yourself, okay, no problem, like, user signed in, we will just go ahead and push this view to the top of the stack, and like, great, they now see posts. Well, we might not always want to treat it like that. In general, when we are pushing and popping views, we want to push and pop views that are really in the similar like context or kind of very closely related. When we're dealing with sign in, signing up, and sign up help, this all has to do with authentication. All has to do with signing in a user and signing them up and signing them out and helping them sign up. Stuff having to do with authentication. When a user navigates to a different part of our app altogether, something that's like completely unrelated to authentication, we don't really want to add two views on top of each other when they're completely unrelated like this. In this type of situation, instead of pushing a view, we will replace the stack immediately. So we want to say like, okay, user signed in, fantastic. I now want to kill all of the views in my current stack, empty the whole thing out, and instead show this other view. So I'm not pushing a view here. I'm replacing the entire view stack with this new view right here. And then maybe like posts have its own set of views that will stack up on top of it, and I will push and pop from all of those. So the key here is that when I'm changing the context of my view, when I'm going to like a totally unrelated part of the application, I might not want to push and pop views anymore. I might want to instead replace the entire stack. To replace the entire stack, we have the method immediately reset route stack here. And so this will reset the entire stack with a new array of routes. You'll also notice on here that we have two other ones or a couple other methods that sound a little bit similar. We have replace at index, and replace previous. These are much more about replacing within the current context of views. So if I replace itself says replace the current view with a new route. Well, doesn't really represent the transition from authentication to posts. When I'm going from authentication to posts, I really want to just say everything I'm showing right now, just nix it all, just toss it. And I want to shift in a totally different context. So I want to shift into the context of showing just posts by itself. Okay, so that is the core of Navigator. The really big takeaway here is that you should be thinking of Navigator as a component that shows a stack of different views. So a stack of different views means we can have multiple views on the stack at a time, at any given time. And when we want to transition between different contexts of views, we'll replace the stack entirely. We want to navigate within kind of the same context of views. We will push and pop to navigate between them. Okay, so now that we've hopefully have a better understanding of what's going on with Navigator, let's move on to the next section and give a shot at implementing it ourselves.